Test. Test. info.
Okay.
Test. 1, 2, test. 1, 2.
Test. 1, 2. Test 1, 2. Test 1, 2. Test. Hey, hey. 1, 2. Test 1, 2. Test. Test 1, 2.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. First, I would like to let you know that we have live captioning available. If you need access, please press the CC button in your menu bar. Also, thanks for your patience as we got some of our things set up. I hope you enjoyed an additional 12 minutes of community wherever you're joining us from, as well as here in the room.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever in the world you are right now joining us from. Welcome to the ACPA and ASHE Presidential Symposium, Finding Our Way, Centering Joy, Care, and Community. My name is Chris Moody. I know what my name is, and I use he, him, and his pronouns, and I'm the Executive Director of ACPA College Student Educators International. Thank you for joining us.
And hello, I am Jason Gilbo with the Association for the Study of Higher Education, better known as ASHE, and I use he and him pronouns. We're so glad that everybody could join us today on what turned out to be a bit of a rainy day here in Raleigh, North Carolina. As I shared before, we're using Zoom AI captioning. If you need access to those, please press the CC button in the bottom of your Zoom window.
Before we begin our program, we would like to take just a moment to acknowledge and send our care and support to those in the path of Hurricane Ian. As we've seen in the past, severe weather events like this can have devastating events in our communities, our campuses, and our lives. At this time, I'd like to welcome Gavin Bell to offer a land acknowledgement of the land currently known as North Carolina, where we here in this space are joining you from today. Gavin?
Good afternoon. Y'all gonna have to do a little bit better than that now. Come on, it's Friday. Good afternoon. That's better. That's better. So, I feel like I can be real with everybody in this room. Can I be real? I've never done a land acknowledgement before, and And when I did my research and looked at different institutions and different areas of the country, it was funny because when I read a lot of them, it's almost implied that the person reading it is typically not a native person. And so I hope that with this one I can bring myself to the table. I hope that I can bring my people to the table and ultimately the spirituality that fuels me and my people together. So that being said, my name is Gavin Bell. I'm an assistant director here at North Carolina State University in their Multicultural Affairs Center, and I'm also a proud member of the Lumbee tribe of North Carolina. Growing up, one of the first questions I learned a Lumbee will ask another Lumbee, in the beautiful accent you hear out of my mouth right now, is, "Baby, who's your people?" And so for us, this is a way to specifically know what lineage someone in the tribe is from, and it's also a way for us to geographically place them within our tribal territory, which primarily spans Robeson, Scotland, and Hoke counties. When you're a kid, you never really think about this question beyond just cultural expectation. My parents taught me how to answer it just like their parents did before them. Now, upon reflection, I recognize why this question holds so much weight, particularly for the elders in my community. Who's your people is a way to identify family and place all at the same time. Two concepts which are pertinent for many Native people, I would say, across the country. It is a way to establish home and, most importantly, unity with one another. When considering the context of many Native communities, both for North Carolina and the South at large, our stories are often nuanced and unique. While many of our tribal areas do not have strict stories of removal, many can be categorized as being foreigners in our own land. Constantly fighting for respect, cultural preservation, and ultimately the survival of our people. Land and the sacredness of it is crucial to this point. The idea of place has often been one of the only unifiers for Native people in this region. It is a way for us to connect with our past while simultaneously preparing for our future. There's often a middle ground, though, that often goes overlooked, the present. And so currently North Carolina is home to 8 state-recognized tribes: the Coharie, Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians, Halawa-Saponi, Lumbee, Meherrin, Occaneechi Band of the Saponi Nation, Saponi, and Waccamaw-Siouan peoples. Each of these tribes and respective communities has legacy and influence in this state that goes far beyond just a simple historical reminiscence. Currently, we serve in the military, education, politics, the arts, and far much more. We are peoples that have maintained our power by recognizing who we are, whose we are, where we come from, and where we are going with the power of our spirit and our ancestors guiding us. As we all sit and recognize this power today here at NC State, understand this. The power that I'm referring to sits within the very fabric of this land. It's a balance and an energy that cannot be removed even by the most evolving architecture and evolutions. Sit with this, not simply as a reminiscent fact, but also as one for your own movement. This land is sacred, and there is power in that. The power is how our people have maintained and thrived for generations, even in the most dire of circumstances. The thing about power and energy, though, is that it doesn't discriminate. Channel it for yourself, and let that be fuel for your own spirits, even on the hardest of days. Honor the land, honor the people, and honor the privilege that it is for us all to be here today. Different cultures, different communities, but the same fuel that can guide us. Not for personal gain, but for rather unity and empowerment, which are the focal points not only for indigenous North America, but it should be the focal points for all of us. Once again, thank you for having me, and I hope that you have a fruitful presidential symposium. Thank you so much.
Whew. I think we should just take a moment and sit in that for a second. Thank you, Gavin. You're first, but I don't think it's going to be your last, so thank you. Thank you. We are very grateful to have North Carolina State University, NC State, host us, and specifically the College of Education. And at this time, I'd like to introduce the Dean of the College of Education, Dr. Paola Stein.
Is this one working?
No, you have to use this one, I'm sorry.
I'm talking with my hand.
I can be.
It's okay. I'll hold it. Hi, everybody. Gavin, that was amazing. Thank you. All right, I'm Paula Stein. I'm Dean here in the College of Education, and it is really nice to be here. So thank you, ASHE, for the invitation and for hosting this important event here on our campus. And in particular, thank you to ASHE's president, Dr. Joy Gaston Gales, for inviting me and for being part of this college and our community. Um, you know, having Joy here in our college and this connection with ASHE makes us a even more powerful and a better college of education. And so it is really an honor for us to support this symposium and be part of this community and engage with you today. So I'm glad we were able to support Joy, and I'm honored to have the opportunity to open this symposium and to say welcome to all the participants who are here or who are through Zoom. This work is important. Sorry, and Joy is an important voice of our college. And I keep thinking every time I say Joy, I think of Joy the person and Joy, you know, what we are going to talk about today. So joy as the action of being happy is also an important part of this work and of our college. I've been dean in the College of Education for about 6 months now, and I'm proud that our college is truly the leading college of education here in the state of North Carolina. And I am proud to say one of the best in the nation as well. Our faculty are the most active researchers among any colleges of education here in North Carolina, based on the number of grants and awards and research expenditure. So we are really a powerhouse trying to generate more knowledge through work in higher education. We have multiple graduate programs ranked at the top of the U.S. News education specialty categories, and the leaders we graduate in K-12 schools, for K-12 schools and for community colleges and for higher education have a history of improving student outcomes. So we are very proud of that. The counselors we graduate are helping build healthier lives, schools, and communities. The teachers we prepare are rated the most effective on survey of school employers. And in every corner of North Carolina and beyond, our alumni are making a transformative impact. And being able to say that our College of Education is impacting lives across our state and beyond, I think it's at the core of what it means to be in higher education. But we know we need to do more, right? These are challenging times for our field and for the profession. So we are intensifying our focus on our land grant mission to prepare educators and prepare more diverse educators to generate knowledge and to provide outreach that advances community and promotes diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. Our colleague Joy has been sharing our college's Change Agent Task Force for Advancing Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And the group has been focused on making recommendations that change practices and policies within our college. And that is really important work. Some of the work they have already implemented includes holding a Courageous Conversation in Community series for faculty staff in the college. We just had one about braving this week. That was really, really beautiful. Creating a web page with resources to DEI, not only for us, but for the community around us, so people can find more information and be better, more educated about the topic. Publishing a monthly newsletter during the academic year that includes resources and events, and spotlighting the work that faculty, staff, and students are doing related to this topic. As you all know, working in this space is hard work. So we are also trying to build a community where all our faculty, staff, and students feel a sense of belonging and hopefully can bring some joy and some care and some community into their own lives and their own work. So I look forward to the conversations today and to what we are going to learn and to be thinking about how do we bring that into our own work, our daily practice, and our College of Education. So I was asked to talk a little bit about what joy means to me. Not only Joy, my colleague, but I would say Joy, my colleague, is part of my joy as well. Because I was thinking, when I was thinking about joy and caring and community, for me, family comes to mind. Um, um, I have a big family. We are loud. We are super close. We talk, we call, you know. And so I was thinking about having a professional family, you know, and that is important as well. Having a place where you work, where you want to go because you like the people you work with, you like what you stand for, you like what you do together, and that is your professional family. I have moved around a lot in my profession, but I have been at NC State for 15 years, and I would say it is every day because of the people who are here and the work we can do together. And I think that is for me the professional joy and the care and the community. So I hope we can strengthen that here today with more colleagues, bringing more educators into this community. And so I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank you for bringing the topic of joy, care, and community to the forefront. We all need it as we continue to engage in our work in higher education. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Dean, for offering those words of welcome and sharing a bit of your joy with us today. For folks who are joining us virtually, hello. As you all have questions, please feel free to type them in the Q&A box. We'll share those with our panelists throughout the symposium, and we'll have some time at the end to address those questions. For my friends in the room, I guess like slip me a note or write me something, and we'll for sure get to your questions as well.
Great. We also invite you to tweet and follow us along on social media using hashtag Prez with a Z Symposium. Hashtag Prez Symposium to continue this conversation with other attendees, both where you are and beyond, during and after this event. The panelists' Twitter handles are also included in the workbooks that you received either by email or when you checked in here today. Speaking of the attendee workbook, we hope you've had a chance to review it. We do encourage that you to have that available throughout this symposium to guide your experience, to take notes, to review the resources that the panelists have themselves provided, and to prepare to compel change and to write your own story, as this session will emphasize is really important, particularly now more than ever before. For the agenda for our time together, in a moment we will be welcomed by ACPA President Andrea Domain and ASHE President Joy Gaston Gales. Next, they will engage higher education scholars, practitioners, and leaders in paired conversations. After each of those conversations, you will have some time to participate in a guided activity writing your own story of higher education. When it is time for that activity, you will find guiding questions and prompts in the workbook. And with that, I'm going to flip my page. Thank you again for joining us. We're excited to turn things over to ACPA President Andrea Domain and ASHE President Joy Gaston Gales. I'll begin with introductions. It gives me great pleasure to introduce the 2022-23 ACPA President, Dr. Andrea D. Domain. We know Dre to be deeply passionate and highly relational in her work focused on facilitating inclusive communities for college students and colleagues across a variety of identities and backgrounds. She has experience as a practitioner, an instructor, and a scholar in higher education, and currently serves as the Chief Strategy Officer in the Division of Student Life at Davidson College, located just outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, where she previously was the Assistant Dean of Students until earlier this year. For Dr. Domain, it is actually really fitting that ACPA and ASHE are hosting this presidential symposium during her year as ACPA president, because her puppy is named Ash. So again, once again, please join me in welcoming and thanking ACPA President Dr. Dre Domain.
And I am very excited to introduce our ASHE 2022 President, Dr. Joy Gaston Gales. Professionally, Joy is an accomplished scholar, teacher, researcher, and mentor. She serves as the Alumni Association Distinguished Graduate Professor of Higher Education and Senior Advisor for the Advancement of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at NC State. Personally, Joy is the mom to Angel and Jaden and the puppy mom to Bentley. Joy is not only a graduate of an HBCU, Shaw University, right up the road, she was a collegiate softball player. Her love of sport, which is not only personal, but part of her research agenda, now leads her to road trips for baseball tournaments with Jaden and cheerleading competitions with Angel. Her parents somehow knew when they named her that she would bring joy to those she meets. And I'm excited to welcome her to the stage to share some of that joy with all of us today.
Am I on? I'm on. Perhaps I am on.
You're
Hello.
on. Am I on? Yes.
You're on.
Okay,
Wonderful.
good. We're on. Well, that was so nice.
Warm
It was so
fuzzy.
personal.
Warm fuzzy.
Jason, I didn't realize. I guess we spend so much time together. You know all my business.
Somebody can't get a link.
Our EDs would hopefully know us pretty well. Awesome.
I'm so excited to have you here.
I'm
Somebody
excited
can't get
to,
the
first, I'm excited to be in space with you personally, but in space on your beautiful campus with all your students and your dean. So thank you for hosting us and having us here. Sincerely, as Chris alluded to, hurricanes happening, y'all, and I know that Florida and other Caribbean regions have already been impacted, and we're still yet to see some more happening in South Carolina, our own state here. I'll be driving through it in a few, and so I hope that people are well and what have you, the best they can given the circumstances.
Yeah, absolutely. So we want everybody to be safe and to take good care of themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think I get to start first. So I guess, so what we're gonna start off just talking about is kind of how we got here and kind of what we're excited. Well, first, as Chris mentioned, I affectionately joke that ASHE, the association, is our play cousin, ACPA. We're bonded, and I've been going to your conferences for many years. I've always felt incredibly welcome. And I want to name, ASHE is what brought us in person first. That was my first in-person conference since COVID, so it was a nice, warm welcome to be in Puerto Rico, safe as well. And we had y'all with us in St. Louis, and so for me, ASHE is always gonna have a special place in that regard. So I guess we'll just start kind of how we came together, beyond the fact that we're both presidents at the same time.
Right, which is cool.
Yeah, it was cool. So
Yeah.
we met over the summer, and I wish we could say that we had a plan. We didn't, and this is one of those moments in which synergy and just us, who we are as scholars and educators, and we're both being in tune with the same vibe. It was very I would say natural thing that we came to. So we had a meeting in the summertime. For me, that was about 3 or 4 months after our conference in St. Louis. And again, that was our first in person since virtual. And I'll be real, I don't know about you, but I was tired. I was coming off some travel myself for the association, but I'm a practitioner as well. And so I'm coming off of, I was understaffed at my college. I was in the middle of trying to hire. I literally was looking around my campus. People were leaving, literally the daily number of emails I got of people exiting the field while we're also trying to hold students, but also to try to have some joy about graduation, right? It was a weird, complex feeling. And I'm a big believer that, you got to start with yourself first, and that if you are not, I used to tell my students this all the time, if you're not okay, healthy, well, happy, joyous, how can you serve and give to others? And so I was really in this space like, I got to figure out how to get excited, how to get some healing moving forward, knowing that a new year was coming with a whole new group of students at my college in particular, and knowing that we had to somehow support a larger association, larger field in this as well. So I think we just started talking organically about what we were naming, and I know for me personally, so again, my own self-care, my own care, it's not just about how I take care of myself physically or emotionally, it's all about some external things too, and so I started thinking about what fills my cup, right? And what fills my cup typically are people. And so I spent quarantine mostly by myself with 2 different puppies, one that actually passed in the middle. And I started just connecting both virtually and in person with my friends, my chosen family, being able, kind of like, as your dean alluded to, my professional community, so my colleagues at Davidson, shout out to Davidson, and my colleagues, just those informal conversations, picking up the phone, dropping in the office, and And then also ACPA, ACPA always fills my cup. People always ask me, you picked the most interesting time ever to be a president of an association. And to me, I was never fazed by the work. I was about the people and wanting to connect with the people. And so to me, humor, finding some joy. I believe in the liberatory consciousness as we move through complexes of oppression. So I needed to be with people. I needed to find my own joy and humor for myself and then bring that into the work that I do. So that's a little bit of kind of how I got here initially and how we got here collectively as well.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that. A lot of what I'm going to share definitely is based on what you shared too. So, but first I want to say welcome to Raleigh. Some of you are visiting from out of town, and we are thankful and grateful that you are here. A lot of you are here at NC State, so thank you for joining us. And so, sorry it's a rainy day, but I've learned to appreciate the rainy days and learn to dance in the rain, not in a hurricane, but in regular rain. And so, but thank you for braving the weather to be here with us today. And those of you who are virtual, we welcome you to Raleigh virtually. And so happy to have you all there too as well. So a fun fact, we had our Mr. and Mrs. Wolf here earlier, and they are interesting pair they are, but they bring a lot of joy. And so it was nice to see you all taking pictures and smiling. Because anytime you're smiling, I feel like you're tapping into a space of joy. And so, we've been excited about this symposium for a long time. I feel like we've been planning it for a long time. And we came together over the summer, and I feel like we got to the topic pretty quickly.
Very quickly.
And based on a lot of what you said, it was like a natural. And yeah, maybe this is a conversation that we've had before, but I feel like we're just at this inflection point now in our society with so much going on, global health pandemic, the great resignation, as you said, and just trying to find a different way to be, to know, to do, to act that can't be more of how we've been doing that. And so I feel like we came here kind of naturally because it was like we were reaching for something beyond what we currently have that we don't necessarily talk about a lot in the academy. On the academic side, student affairs side, whatever side of the academy, we don't talk about these things, but they're so important to the work that we do, because if we don't, like you said, take care of ourselves, we don't have much to offer, whether you're offering it to students face to face or whether you're offering it through your research and your writing. Like it's like you have to engage in this and also to repurpose it for what it means for you, because it can't be about this production model, right, that we get caught up in the academy. That can't be the center. Like the center has to come from somewhere else. And so that's really, I feel like, what this discussion is about today. And, I think during the summer, Beyonce's album dropped. And so we were all in the Beyonce space.
Absolutely,
and
always.
So I think we started with Renaissance, but we ended up back to Black is King. In terms of, I don't know if y'all know that album, but it's good. And y'all know the song, Find Your Way Back.
Yes.
Don't let this life drive you crazy, find your way back. So we left out the back because we don't want to go back to pre-pandemic. We just want to find our way. And so I think Beyonce, shout out to Beyonce, she just gives us tools and gems. And so that was part of it too, that we were just in that space and time. But to me, it just speaks to a need that I feel we all have. And so a lot of what we see with people leaving the academy, with people leaving the profession, not just in academia, but in corporate spaces too, like it's speaking to a need that people want to be fulfilled. And I'll tell you, like the pandemic was hard for me. And I spent a lot of time searching for not only how am I going to get through this, but also how I want to be different on the other side of it, right? And I spent a lot of time just in reflection, and I think a lot of people did that. And one of the realities is that part of it, they came away with what matters to them.
Yes.
And I think that's also informing what we see happening. Like work doesn't matter to me as much. And I have a different way of thinking about time and space. And I want to be intentional about how I spend that. And so if we're going to stay in the academy in healthy, whole ways, we're going to have to redefine what that means for us. And it's going to mean something different for each of us. And so I'm hoping that we will get there in this space today.
Absolutely.
So that's a little bit about how we got here, but also, you know, what we hope you all will get from it today, get from this discussion.
And then we had the wonderful privilege and honor of picking people to join us, which is the fun part, right? So
that was fun.
So fun fact for me, I had a person in mind already, and I went to my inner circle and asked people who I should bring, and luckily, again, Synergy was in line. I'm gonna introduce the person that I invited to join us, and I'll name. When I was thinking about the panel, we talked about this. It was important to bring a practitioner who is in the work on campus to balance, you know, faculty. I'm always team faculty. I'm a faculty member too, but just like we wanted a practitioner to be in that space, and so I'm super honored. And so I'm going to introduce my panelist. And I want to name, I've been a fan favorite of hers for a while. We've been trying to connect and find some kind of way to bond, and this is the moment, and so I'm deeply grateful. So I have Dr. Joan Collier. She served as the Assistant Vice President for Equity and Inclusion and is an affiliated faculty member in the Graduate School of Education at Rutgers University. Reflected in her professional and personal lives are her social extroversion, genuine curiosity about the worlds around her, and sense of adventure and vibrancy. She described herself as a mix between Bell Hooks' All About Love and Crime Mob's Nuck If You Buck. And I hope y'all know that song. So Joan, Joan is Dr. Collier.
All right, let Joan sit in the middle.
We'll swap.
All right, so I definitely agree that we have the perfect scholar leaders in conversation with us today. I do think both of them, you, Joan, and you, Wilson, offer us something unique, different, authentic, just genuine, that we don't see a lot of in the academy. And so, you know, Joan, you live these values in the work that you do on behalf of students, and Wilson, you write about them so eloquently. If you haven't read his work, let me tell you, you better read it. And so I first came into contact with Wilson, Dr. Okello, before I actually met you. So Chris Travers was a faculty member here. Y'all all know and love Dr. Travers. Some of you remember him, but he was talking about your work, and he talked about it with such passion. I was like, oh, this is good. And I wanted to come to the session. We were at ASHE. I wanted to come, but I had another thing that I had to do. I was like, man, I don't want to miss it. And then, like, during the global health pandemic, I was reading your work, and it was just giving me life. And so when it came to figure out your name was one of the first to come to mind. And then Rashonda, you were back up. If he said no, I was coming to you next. So let me introduce. So Dr. Wilson Okello is an artist scholar, a son, brother, friend, partner, and father to a curious, joy-filled, gifted, every good thing 17-month-old named August. He draws on Black critical theories to advance research on student development theory, qualitative inquiry, racialized trauma and stress, critical masculinities, and anti-racist curriculum and pedagogies, to name a few. Published widely, Dr. Okello is co-author of Trauma-Informed Practice in Student Affairs, Multidimensional Considerations for Care, Healing, and Well-Being, a New Directions for Student Services volume through Wiley Press, and author of a forthcoming text with SUNY Press that explores the potential of centering Blackness in student development theory. Among other early career awards, he was named a 2022 Emerging Scholar by ACPA. All right, welcome, Dr. Okello. Welcome to the stage.
Appreciate you.
Yeah.
Appreciate you.
I get the first question. So fun. So similar to, you know, when Joy and I talked a little bit about how we got here, we were not defining here, but the question I'm going to raise to everybody here is, how did we get here? And you can define what here means to you, and why do you think we're still here?
Well, we're here to actually create space. Well, these conversations are already happening.
Right.
They're happening in spaces that are, you know, off to the side or via the text or, you know, whatever else. And so what I appreciate about being here and how we got here is that our leaders thought it not robbery to formalize a conversation that could be legible to people who otherwise wouldn't legitimize a conversation around care, community, and joy. And so I really do appreciate that. I think getting here, the pandemic has been a lot for a variety of reasons, but being in a place where we can no longer, we can do a lot of things, but being in a place where we're choosing to say no more. And trying to actually grapple with how do we move it from this theoretical concept of care to the practice of care and being in community, pulling them together, pulling them apart so we're not missing things. I'm here to grapple, and I'm here to have a good time with people who are interested in doing the same. So I'll pull back on that, but I'm thrilled for us to be having a conversation now.
So, I've been thinking a lot about, what we need in this moment, right? This moment of inflection. And so things like joy, community care, critical hope even come to mind and resonate with a lot of folks. And so I just want to know what comes up for you all. It could be the same or an extension of that.
I'm an extrovert, so I'll just keep talking. I'm trying to make space for the introverts.
Yeah, make space for the introverts. We need time to process.
Ask it again, Joy.
Yeah, so, what comes up for you all in this moment? This moment where we feel like we've been lost, trying to find a way. I know for me it's joy, community, care, critical hope. But what comes up for you?
Please.
Yeah,
No,
yeah, yeah.
tag your it.
Yeah. One, again, it's a privilege to just be in community with this group, these brilliant Black women. Thank you all just for your willingness to join us on this journey. For me, we talked a lot about what it meant to sort of set the stage for this conversation. And so as we do, I'm thinking a lot about what it means to set joy, care, community as an intention. I'm thinking about what it might mean to set this as a way of anchoring ourselves, but also anchoring our work. I love how the poet, Black feminist writer Lucille Clifton says, won't you celebrate with me that every day something has tried to kill me and has failed. I stopped believing in heroes and heroines, not because I grew out of them, but because I realized they were flawed, errant, misleading, deceptively reliable. They were human, and underneath their masks and capes said all the things I believed that they were insulated from an armor built to withstand and to keep the messy from getting out. I stopped believing in heroes and heroines when I realized that I should be celebrated, be penned into legend. Lights, camera, action, and imitation for each day. This world has tried to kill some piece of me and failed. So I played songs on the contours of my memory to sing myself joyful in octaves outside my range. I held my own hand when there was no one there to usher me out of hours of despair, to tell me I could make it, to show me how to break and remake, to break and remake, to break and live broken. Radical reinvention is an act of preservation that wills purpose back into living. We have come too far to go back now. The he, she, here, they, in us has come too far to go back now. We stitched ourselves back home, back together. Holistically placed our efficacy in affected jostling winds and tug of wars between poles of self-esteem. We reached for the high bar and pulled ourselves up. We are strong when we have to be. Each day, this world has tried to kill some piece of me and failed. I was a lucky one, covered by the shade of mango trees that bore arrows meant for me, spared and held up on backbones, turned bridges carrying hope in metric tons. This heroic living is for them. to bear their story and live mine. Poured out fountains for youth and morning dew for those in thirst. I owe them for trusting my worth. I owe myself my liberty attained at birth. Each day, this world has tried to kill some piece of me and failed each day. Shame has tried to kill some piece of me and failed each day. Doubt has tried to kill some piece of me and failed each day. Insecurities have tried to kill some piece of me and failed. If I am free, it's only because I'm not depending on someone else
Come on.
to save me. What are your intentions
Yes.
for this day? What are your intentions with the ideas, these concepts, these big ideas like joy, care, community? Is it just a thought experiment, or is it something that we're thinking has the capacity to guide how we move in and through this world, in and through our work? This is what's coming up for me.
Oh, wow. Okay, symposium over. Wow. Wow. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. You don't see the tears. You see the tears. Oh my gosh.
He said he was gonna do it, and I was like, "Go run through. And I was like,
Damn, I wasn't ready.
Oh, no.
I wasn't ready. So I gotta get myself together.
oh
Hold on.
yes, because you got some place to go. That's right.
Ooh. Yeah.
That was delicious,
Wow.
delightful.
Set the intention.
Yeah,
Set the
Yeah.
intention.
Yeah. I hope y'all got that.
Yeah.
Y'all received it? All right. All right.
I'm marinating the whole room. Yes.
Yes.
We got places to go.
Yes.
We got places to go.
And we gotta go with intention.
Come on.
Or don't go at all.
Exactly.
Or go sloppily.
No, don't go.
And
do
don't
that.
actually grapple with the tension of why we actually have to be thoughtful about
That's it.
joy and community and care, because our structures are not built to do those things.
Yeah.
That's it.
And the people who it does it for doesn't realize it.
That's it.
Yeah.
And so the rest of us are grappling. How do we do that good work with ourselves collectively? I'm an administrator. I have to go beyond theory, right? I have to put into practice. What does it mean to do care through institutional means? How do I do community through institutional means? Right? How do I bring joy into my work and not get caught up with HR? They're legitimate questions, right? Like,
Yes,
that's-
yeah.
how do we? And we get to grapple.
We get to grapple.
And I'm grateful, and I'm so glad you connected it back to good, rich literature that already told us how to think
already
about
there.
and do our work.
It's already there.
We already have tools. We just get to grapple and scrap and do some things and come up with some stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
That's a good time.
That's good.
Yeah.
I think it's actually Wilson's the next question.
Okay, so this is I'm lost because
I don't even know. I was going to say,
I'm just like I need a minute. Hold on.
But
We can freestyle.
Get myself together.
move into it. We just move
Okay.
into it.
I can help. So, intention, purpose, right? Let's talk about community. We talk about that word community, we throw it around, right? We often, community to me usually means there's not a lack of intentionality often happens in community. We talk about the campus community, right? Whatever that means, right? So let's talk about, what does community mean to you? What is involved in community? How do you know that you're in community when you're not? What does that mean? What comes up when you say community?
you said that was for Wilson.
Anybody,
Oh,
we're freestyling
Lord.
now.
I'm just having a good time. I mean, community can be a lot of things, right? So we go to a place. I belong to Rutgers Community because I work there. I belong to my birth family. Shout out mom, dad, hey pops. And then I get to create community. I've changed a lot, as Dean has, in student affairs and higher education. And I've had to build community. And so it means being a part of a group of people in my community who see me, who I can grieve with, who I can celebrate with, who I can be held accountable by, and who do it in loving ways, and who say, I see you, I see the potential, I see you are a baddie in so many ways. Stop undervaluing yourself. They hold you, they lift you up. And that is community. And then there's a community that I'm a part of because I'm, in theory, a part of this community, but it's vague by design sometimes. Because that community is not necessarily where I am fully seen. I'm a part of it by like proxy or position. And that is where close community can feel kind of awkward because I don't know if I can do that. And so I have to rely on my home community. But for me, it means safety. It means freeness. It means I'm able to think about my best self, and I can be my raggedy self. And they'll say, we love you, but you're being raggedy. Let's get you right. And I'm not mad about it, because we need people who can say, you're not being your best self. What's going on with you? Like, I don't know. And they're like, well, let us remind you who you are and who you can be.
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
Alexis Pauline Gumbs, she writes about the mother weddell seal. The mother will hold the baby's head underwater while the baby squirms and coughs and sputters. The baby is new here. They don't know that they can breathe underwater until they do, and then everything changes. After weaning is over, this baby seal will be able to dive 2,500 feet below the water. They'll be able to stay there for an hour if they desire. They'll be able to move between frozen and liquid worlds, but they don't know that just yet. Community is the individuals who plunge us into knowing our capacity, right? These are the individuals who will hold our head to the water, right? While we sputter, while we cough, right? Because, right, they believe in something more for us, right? They believe that we have a capacity for more. And so I'm grateful for the individuals who have done this for me, even while I squirmed and sputtered, and because without them, again, I don't know that we have the capacity to breathe differently, right? And I think community allows us, or it's an invitation into breathing differently, right? Breathing in ways that we didn't know were possible until, again, our heads were held.
Yeah. Wow. That's deep. Okay. I'm back now. And so in your workbook, there are some reflective questions, those first set of reflective questions. So we're going to give you time, 10 minutes, and we have a playlist that was curated by the four of us. And so if you want said playlist, be sure to let us know. We'll be happy to give it to you. So we're going to give you 10 minutes to think about those first set of reflective questions in your workbook while you listen to the Find Your Way playlist. All right.
Hello. I think I'm still.
Not yet? Okay. Testing, testing. All right, we're back. So hopefully that was a thoughtful, meditative reflection opportunity for you. And so now we're back with Dr. Okello and I, and we're going to talk about joy. And I feel like this is your jam. And so I'm excited to learn with and from you. And I have some questions, but we also make room for, yeah, let it do what it, let it do what it does.
Let it do what it does.
Yeah.
Let it do what it does. Testing, no.
Did you turn on, is it a mute? Yeah, turn off the mute.
That's all right.
All right,
Get
we
me
got it.
together. Get me together. Community, y'all.
Yeah.
Community.
Teamwork, dream work. All right, so I've just found myself talking about this concept of joy a lot this year. And, you know, I'm still finding my way in terms of all the things that it can mean and does mean. And so I want to know what joy means to you. And then sometimes joy gets a bad rap, right? Because people conflate it with happiness. And so, which is not joy. They're not the same. And so, and I also want to know, like, how have you experienced joy in your life?
Such an important question and an important distinction. For me, joy, well, I'll start by saying that it's the difference between emotions and feelings for me. Joy meditates as an emotion. Happiness meditates for me as a feeling. I see emotions as the physiological, the embodied sort of responses that we might have, and feelings, more or less, are how we might talk about a particular sort of aspect of joy.
Okay,
right?
yeah.
And so I think about feelings like happiness, gladness, as temporal, as fleeting, as things we might experience in the pleasantries of life. Right? Joy for me is a bit more elusive. Right? Joy is, I think there are some intense ideas that might feel like joy, like it might produce sort of affective responses in us, like shouting and dancing, right? Some of these things we might offer as responses, and it might feel a lot like joy, but even that, for me, is not quite how we might think about joy. Joy, for me, again, is elusive. It's that thing sort of tucked away, and so if I could offer you some imagery, so the project of coloniality has to do with stripping of people, or part of the project of coloniality has to do with stripping people of their traditions, of their ways of knowing, of their identity in many ways. For indigenous Africana peoples, part of the colonial project was taking the drum from these people, right? The drum in many communities has, knowledge-producing capacities, and it served as a site of call and response. It offered individuals opportunities to connect differently, and so I think colonizers, right, and plantation owners understood this, and they sought to strip people of the drum. Now, the brilliance of Africana peoples was that the absence of the drum didn't sort of erase the memory of it, right? And so they took the memory, right, and they placed the memory of the drum in their voice box, right? And so if you show up at a black church, Dr. Breeden, right, you might hear something in the cadence, right? You might hear something in the tonality, right? There's something there that is hearkening back to memory. And for me, that's what joy is. It's that thing tucked away that colonizers don't have an opportunity to tap onto, right? It's that thing that is a mesh of memory, of remembering. It's that thing that allows us to dream. It's that thing that sort of takes us into imagination. I love the story of Harriet Jacobs and the incidents in the life of a slave girl. They talk about Harriet Jacobs as having to exist in an attic space, 9 by 7 by 3, right? That's where she lived for 7 years to escape the terror, right, of the plantation. But she also talks about, this is the brilliance of it. She talks about being able to experience joy in that space, and it was in that garage space, right, that she first imagined freedom. That shouldn't be possible, right? When we think about individuals existing in terror, you shouldn't be able to conceptualize something like freedom while you are tucked away in an attic space, but she's calling us to something that's more than happiness. It's not just the feeling, and this for me is where we might understand joy as something deeper than just a feeling, right? Because it's not just how I feel in a moment, but the potential, the promise of joy is that it escapes our current condition, right? It thinks in excess of what is, it imagines a world that could be.
Wow.
And so for me, again, I think it's a deeper plane that we're attempting to get to, right? Something that we can hold on. I would love if we could all sort of exist in a utopian sort of world where gladness and happiness were all we needed. But Doctor, listen, we need something. I need something I can do something with, right? Yeah. I need a joy that is going to take us through the happy days, but also the sad ones, right? The ones where I don't feel like shouting, right? The ones where I need to show up, right, but don't know how, right? I need something that's going to anchor me, right? And happiness can't do that, right? Gladness can't do that. And so I'm trying to think about what it means to meditate on a thing that's tucked away and is sort of more deeply cultivated. And so when you talk about experiencing joy in my life, I think about it in two ways. I think about it as a site of creativity. And then I think about it as a site of presence. For creativity, for me, whether it's in scholarship or poetry, it's an opportunity to imagine differently, right? To take us to another space, right? I think joy's capacity, right, allows us to imagine differently, right? And I think when we have an opportunity to create, I think there's this potential there for joy. Yeah. I also think about it as presence. And so every morning, from about 6:15 to about 7 o'clock.
A.M.
A.M. A.M. August and I, August, my little one, we're getting dressed. We're getting ready for the day. And in that sort of 45 minutes before the rush of the day starts, he's playing, but I'm sponging his hair. I'm asking him about what he dreamed about. I'm asking him what he hopes for today. I'm sharing with him what I hope for him today. Right? We go to the mirror, and as I'm sponging, he'll keep me in line. He'll show me if my beard is off, right? And so I hand him the pick, and he'll get me together. Together. But what I'm hoping to cultivate between us and for him is moments of pause, moments of presence, moments where we're able to sort of take stock of the day, take stock of how we're feeling, take stock of how we want to approach the day. And to show them that there's a particular intimacy, I think, that can happen with the self and with others as we do that. And so creativity and presence are things that come to me when I sort of think about this big idea of joy.
Wow. Wow. Thank you for articulating what Shirley Caesar meant when she said, in reference to joy, the world can't give it to me, and the world can't take it away. That was the most beautiful articulation of that for me. So thank you. And what I also heard you say, and kind of explicitly, is that, those moments in the morning that you have with your beautiful child, you are affirming them in ways that as they grow, that's where their joy will come from.
That's it. I think we'll get here, but for me, I am long past depending on institutions to affirm who we are, right? I don't believe that they can love you back or forward, right? And so if that is the reality that we exist in, higher ed, but also any other sort of institution, right? White institutions broadly, right? I don't know that they will ever have the capacity to love, to affirm, to build, to think about joy, to think about care and community. And so for him, I want him to be able to go out into the world and to say that whether it's the ABCs of affirmations that we're working through right now or something else, you got to be able to find this thing on your own, right? And that's not to excuse institutions and the work. We will push, we will challenge, and I think y'all are gonna get there. We're gonna do that work. And right, in the absence of something else, some structure trying to affirm you, I need August, ASHE, I need you to be able to say it is so, right? And so those are, that's part of the what I'm trying to sort of build up and trying to think about. And something we really get to share and build together.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it.
Thank you for naming
I
that.
love it. So, you know, Dr. Dre and I are wearing these shirts.
Yeah.
I don't know if y'all noticed, but the shirt says joy is an act of resistance.
Yeah.
And so my question to you, like, what does this mean in relation to thinking about humanizing spaces? And, does joy always have to be linked to opposition?
Yeah. We talked a bit about this.
Yeah.
I love the concept. I appreciate the concept of joy as an act of resistance. I think that is absolutely true. And I want to complicate that just a bit, right? Which is to say that what does it, I want to believe that joy can mean something more for us than having to sort of fight against, right? If we're to truly understand joy as the capacity for imagination or the capacity for affirmation, then it can't just sort of be or exist in opposition to the thing that seeks to destroy us, right? Or seeks to sort of quell our spirit. But I think it limits our emancipatory imagination when we only sort of consider it as something that is in opposition to, right? And so I'm trying to sort of think more expansively, right? Push us to consider joy as a thing that can just be. Right? What does it mean to sort of take up joy as, again, that tucked away space that allows us to create, to resist, to refuse, to be, right? And so I think there's, again, it's really just an opportunity for us, to complicate it, not erase notions of joy as resistance, because again, I think those things are true and get us through in particular moments. But I think there's far more utility to the notion of joy, right, than just sort of just opposition, right? As a tool of opposition, right? There's life-affirming substance, as you named, and so trying to add texture, I think, to our conversation on joy. How about you?
Yeah, no, I'm with you, and when you don't put the narrow lens on it, it can be all of those things.
I think so.
And in my years of living, I found that if I can create the space to cultivate joy, it does what I need it to do whenever I need it to do it, whatever it is, right? But if I don't make the space for it, then I find myself getting caught up in what I call tactics of mass distraction, right?
Come on.
So the joy keeps me centered in a way where I don't fall for the okie doke, right? Because I feel like that's how these institutions and systems are set up. They want you to fall for it, right? They do things and set up things in ways that if you are not careful, you'll get caught up in that stuff, and it will distract you from your gifts.
Come on.
It will distract you from your creativity.
Yeah.
It will distract you from the affirmation that comes from within because you're listening to the noise from outside. And so, for me, cultivating joy is a must. Like we cannot afford not to do it. You can't afford not to do it. Because if you don't do it, then, the risk is just too great.
The risk is too great?
It's too great.
Yeah.
And so I know that you write a lot about love. And so, and when I tell you, it just fills me up so much. So what do you think is the connection between joy and love? Now, love, you talked about get you in HR trouble. Like people act like love is not a bad thing.
No, it's not. Yeah.
And I wish more people would come into spaces where they can start with, before you even begin a class, I love you as students, right?
Yeah.
And what dynamic would that
Yeah.
like what do you enter into the space when you start there?
That's good.
And so I've been listening to Chris Endham's hip hop, he called himself the hip hop educator. And it's just a space for K through 12 educators to talk about, you know, how can they do a new, different thing that's rooted in love. And I hear so many teachers say, you know, I start with telling my students that I love them, right? And so what does that mean if we start from a place of love?
Yeah. Again, such an important question, and I understand joy and love as first and foremost communal imperatives.
That's right.
It's communal imperatives, right? I'm thinking about Toni Morrison's Beloved, and Baby Suggs writes in what we understand as this sort of sermon in the clearing, right? And in that clearing, she's preaching to folks, to black folks, and she talks about loving flesh. She says, here in this place, we flesh that weeps and laughs, flesh that dances on bare feet and grass. Love it hard, because yonder, they don't love it. And for me, this notion of love as a communal imperative is an opportunity for us to figure out, again, how we can sustain ourselves and one another, because outside of this space, outside of the places where we come to know love, we can't depend on the yonder to affirm us, right? We can't depend on the institution to affirm us. And so what I hear Baby Suggs saying is that we have got to figure out a loving practice, right, that is going to see our humanity, right, in full, to see our humanity in ways that I think that others, just simply don't have the capacity to do, right? And so you asked a question, part of your question, of your last question was sort of thinking about it in relation to sort of dishumanizing education and this idea of the theme that's guiding ASHE. And for me, I think love, right, offers us an invitation to push the idea of what it even means to be human.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
Right. I think there's a way of being human that the Academy sort of takes up that is premised on individualism, premised on competition, it's premised on isolationism, right? Like things that you alluded to earlier that are unsustainable in practice, right? And so what does it mean for us to, one, imagine alternative forms of being human, right? But to get at that alternative form of being human by doing the very thing that you talked about, which is thinking about, well, what does it mean to cultivate a practice of love, right? And so, again, thinking about love and joy primarily as communal imperatives. I think joy opens the space for love, and I think love creates the conditions for joy. And so that's how I'm sort of thinking about it in relation to.
Wow. Yeah, I love that articulation of it. And so we've talked a lot about joy and the importance of cultivating it. But I can read y'all's minds, and y'all like, yeah, this sounds nice, but how do you do it? Right? How do you do it? And so can you talk about, you talked about I kind of see the ritual that you have, and I'm calling it a ritual because I think that's what it is, in the mornings. I see that as you being intentional, and you had that beautiful open mic. We didn't even have open mic, and we gave y'all open mic. That like just being intentional, and I feel like we have to be intentional about cultivating joy. So I see that that connection that you make between you and August as being intentional about cultivating joy and setting and y'all, you don't know, like you doing that, like that at least gets you to 2 o'clock. right?
does,
Before
it does.
before I pop off, right?
That's right,
You
that's
get you
right.
to 2 o'clock, maybe 3 if it's,
maybe
if it's
3.
a
It's a
good
good
one.
day.
Maybe
It's a
if it's a
good
good day, maybe
day.
3
Yeah,
o'clock
yeah,
before it starts getting a little loose,
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
And so, but what other ways do you cultivate joy?
Well, so I think cultivating joy, I think in education, I think we appreciate, we love this idea, the idea of joy. We like the idea of community as thought experiments, right? And we sort of leave them there as thought experiments, right? This is a good idea to have. I think folks at this point can articulate it with ease, right? It's part of our lexicon. We talk about joy, we talk about care and community as things we always ought to be doing. But again, I think it sort of just exists as a thought experiment. So what I believe we need is a different theoretical practice. And I'm not talking about theory to practice in particular, because I think we rush to that. We think we have an understanding of a concept, a big idea like joy, and then we rush to say, here's what it should look like in practice. But I'm saying that I think we need a different theoretical practice, which is to say we need to practice notions of joy, right? And so it changes sort of the essence of the question for me. Again, pointing back to Alexis Pauline Gumbs in this book, Undrowned. It's a beautiful, what I would call devotion, Black feminist lessons from marine animals. But she talks about dolphins and how they've constructed evolutionary sort of fins. Dolphins don't have the skeletal structure for fins, right? And so she raises the question of sort of where did they come from? The fins are, by design, they provide stability, autonomy. They allow individuals of the dolphin to move through the ocean that is always moving, right? That is always sort of unsettled, right? And so she talks about this evolutionary practice of the fin literally sort of becoming something that was necessary. And I think joy can be something very similar, right? The dolphin is not necessarily concerned about constructing the ocean as joy, right? Or the institution as joy, but the dolphin is trying to figure out what is the evolutionary practice that I need to be able to move through an institution that is always changing, right? That is always sort of in waves, right? And so I think for us, the question that I sort of want to pose for us is not necessarily how do we cultivate joy, but how might we imagine, how do we understand joy? What is the evolutionary practice that we want our joy to do, right? What is it that we are sort of cultivating joy to do, right? I don't know that change in the institution is the goal or ought to be the goal necessarily, per se, right? I think there's important work that needs to happen there, but I think the work, perhaps, is figuring out what joy means to us first, right? Getting a sense for what the sound, the look, the feel of joy in our own lives. And as we commit to theoretical practice, or as we commit to joy as a practice, I think the institution then, right, can get a better sense of what this actually looks like, right? And may respond to it. But again, I don't know that our work is to try to sort of be joy into the institution so much as to become joy, right? To evolve a sense of joy in our lives and allow the institution to sort of respond around us. So that's how I'm sort of grappling with it.
Wow. I love that so much because to me, it's a different level of centering because these institutions are sort of designed to do what they were designed to do.
That's
right?
right.
And if you spend your time and energy trying to, push that mountain down, that might not be the best use of your time and energy. But, and I see this kind of in my own life. When I cultivate joy, then, cultivating joy is for me.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
But what comes out of that is for you.
Come on.
Yeah. So that's
Say
kind
that
of what.
again. Say that again.
Yeah. The cultivating joy is for me. What comes out of that is for you. Right? And so it goes back to something we said earlier, I think, like you can't do for others until you fill your cup up. That's for you. but it doesn't just stay there,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because when you take the time to cultivate, and I like the way you framed it. Say it again. We're trying to engage in a practice
That's it.
around it.
Yeah, yeah.
So when you are intentional about doing that, it fills you up in such a way where you cannot just say it.
That's it.
You can be it.
You got to embody. Come on.
Right?
Come on.
And when you let your light shine in that way, it gives permission for other people to do the same. He done twirled in the chair. That's what I felt like doing on your open mic. Like I couldn't move though. I was stuck. I was stuck. Yeah. So that's a new insight for me. And you talk about putting like these narrow boundaries around joy. I mean, I feel like this discussion just made it so much more expansive for me. I'm on a whole new level. So I'm about to be. I ain't there yet, but I'm going. Y'all might get an open mic when I practice. So, no, I'm not there. So, all right. So let's look at our second set of questions in the workbook. And we're going to put the playlist back on. And I really hope that y'all walk away with the plan for yourselves in terms of, how you want to move differently, how you need to move differently so that you can be your best self for yourself and for others. Okay. All right. That was good. Yeah. Wow.
Test. Oh, there I am. Hello. Hi.
Oh, I said I'm on mute.
Well done. Real quiet. Okay.
Oh,
You good? We're on now.
oh no. Uh-oh.
Hello? Is it good?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah. Are you good?
No. It's
I think we're having
it
a
still
mic
says
issue.
mute. On the top. Amen. All right.
Welcome back.
I usually just turn it off. So.
It's all good. It's all good. Cool. Well, welcome back. Hope y'all had a good break. For our folks zooming in, the folks in the room as well. I get to be with my homie Joan.
Yeah.
I'm so excited for this. And we're going to talk a lot about community and care
Yeah.
and all things, and we're
Yep.
going to see how it goes. And so, let's start. So I am deep breath, yes.
Yeah.
I am deeply connected to grief. I think a lot of people that know me well know that I lost both my parents about 10 years ago, about 6 months apart. I lost my homie, my Prince, my dog Prince, last year as well. And so I have a really intimate awareness of grief. And I'm starting here because over the summer, and even as we were initially talking, I was grappling with this feeling in the air of higher education. There was something in the air. I was like, this feels familiar. Like, what is this feeling? And it was grief.
Yep.
And I had this feeling like higher ed is collectively grieving.
All day.
So when we could just hold that. And I mean grief in the sense that we have lost colleagues and students
Yes.
for a variety of reasons. People have exited, and just the way in which we do the work and who we are in the work is
Yep.
inherently different. And I know I personally have had a lot of like, oh, I have to grieve. I changed my job in the last 6 months, and
Yep.
so I grieved my exit from DEI a little bit. And so I'm just curious from you, how do you see grief showing up in higher ed in our most recent iteration of our world?
I mean, so grief is everywhere. So I'm going to talk to y'all and
Yes,
like over
we will do
here.
this
And
way.
hey, friends out on Zoom. So true stories, I'm an end-of-life doula. And so grief is all over the place all the time. And we also know that grief, like we are grieving non-events, right? So these things that don't come to pass. And so for the past almost 2.5 years, we've been not doing things, right? We've been not having that celebration that we wanted from grad school. We've delayed some pieces. We have lost people, like they're gone from this realm of life. Intimately close to us, people, our friends have lost people. Then we have these losses of things. People lost jobs that rattle a lot of people's sense of who they are and who they want to be. And then we've lost a sense of like what could have been, some sense of like possibility. And our current existences typically don't make room for people to grieve. It's like, oh, you lost your auntie on Sunday? Okay, on Thursday, we just gonna have this big departmental meeting. Like, girl, I'm still in shambles over here. And the room that we make in policy, right? We have bereavement leave sometimes.
Yes.
Sometimes we don't. But grieving is the sadness. It is the feeling of immense loss. Bell Hooks says that we know how much, that the more we grieve, the more we loved. And so when we lose things that really matter to us, when we lose people, we grieve hard. I mean, I lost my mentor the last semester of my PhD program. And I was weighted. I mean, I could feel her energy for the next year. And it was heavy. The sorrow was so heavy. And I still had to go to work. I still had to go to school. I had to find a new job. And so coming into this academic year where we're supposed to be normal, and unfazed by loss and by uncertainty or the certainty that no one's going to care. Or that it's not that no one's going to care, it's that the people who can care don't. And the erasure of our humanity, because grieving is human. It is a basic human thing, right? And so coming into the year, it's looked like frustration. It's looked like work to rule. Okay, you said I got to be here, so sure, I'm going to just be here and do exactly what I have to do, stay on my face. Which has turned into this, quiet resignation that some people like, wrangling their fingers around, like, how dare you quit quietly? And it's like, how dare you expect me to show up and not be human? We are collectively grieving. And culturally, as a U.S. culture, we actually don't have traditions of grief besides funerals.
Right.
And even at funerals, we don't want to be grieving, right? And so that has looked like people being exhausted. It has looked like folks not knowing what to make. And so then somewhat, almost flattening themselves out to because they're numb. What more do you want from me?
Right.
What more do you want? And so for me, the measure, grief moves me to joy. Grief moves me to seek joy, to cultivate it, and grief moves me to be more embedded in community and more embedded in care.
Right.
And so shout out to Scholar Wilson, okay, who already said some things that make room for us, right? Our institution's going institution.
Right.
An institution's job is to sustain itself over time, whether I'm here or not.
Yes.
If something happens to me on the way home, my boss will absolutely be in shambles. The institution will post my carf and be right back on its way, right? Because I play a role for the institution. And so, child, my ADHD brain took that thing away just like that.
That's okay.
Let me get it back together, y'all. Hold on a second. And so, nope, baby, that thing is still gone.
we can sit. We got time. We have time.
Run me back. We were saying that our institutions and how we care and how we show up. I moved to care and community. Thank
Yes.
you. My therapist told me, don't chase a thought, it'll come back to me.
Yeah.
So I just make room for it, and then it'll come back.
Yeah.
And so I am moved to care and community, and that for me is like joyful. But again, our structures are not in a way like, oh, people are sad, move to community and care. It's like, no, productivity, get your work done. And so people are trying to figure out, I think collectively and individually, how do I show up in care, community, joy, love, honesty, and do this when these structures are around me? And so, yes, part of it for me too is that care has always been communal. It's very hard for me to actually tease out my living from community. And so when people have shown back up this year, and let me pause, I work in New Jersey. This is our first year at my institution fully back without restrictions. There are other people who functionally were never actually allowed to reprieve.
Exactly.
And they've been grieving in real time the utter lack of care of their institutions who made mandates around about folks' ability to protect themselves. That's a different level of grief. And grief has a bunch of different stages. They say that's about 6 to 7. Anger is one of them. Folks are angry.
Yep.
They're negotiating.
Yep.
They're trying to make sense of things. And what we know about our brains is that we have these ideas. I love a theory. So just go with me. I know Kolb is old, but okay. We have these ideas. And then we try something. And then we think about it. And then we have a new idea. And so people have been doing that, and they're trying to figure out, what are we supposed to be doing?
Yep.
And how do we go back to normal when normal wasn't working? And the disruption of the pandemic provided us an awesome opportunity to try something new. And because collectively institutions lacked imagination, we went back to that. That wasn't already working. And so folks are trying to figure out, we had a chance to do new. We want the comfort of familiarity, but we wanted something that actually cared about us because we are more clear than ever. We're not promised tomorrow.
Right.
We're more clear than ever who matters to us and what matters to us. And the structures are saying, here's what matters. And we're like, absolutely, curse word, not. And so that's what I see showing back up on our campuses. And I'm speaking for Joan, but that's what I see. But because we're in community with folks across the country and folks across the world, right? That normal doesn't work. It didn't actually work before. We were just tied to it, and there hadn't been the collective break in running to us to say, now, wait a minute, it could be different. And there's also this push. Summer 2020 was what it was. There's been a lot of things to be said about it. One of the things that does come up, though, is the push to indigeneity, right? To decolonize or to move back toward an indigenous source of ways of knowing. And lots of indigenous communities have actual rituals of mourning. There are actual rituals. And so I see people moving toward those rituals. Right. I see people trying to bring into their spaces rituals that work for them. And we're funny about the word ritual because it's really like religious and churchy, but ritual is what we make it. And so I see people making ritual out of connecting with people and calling the ritual of work, like trying to nuance it with like, oh, I actually should reach out and see how that person is doing. Before, when someone got sick, okay, well, they out for 3 days. Someone is sick now, we need to call and check. or being thoughtful that maybe they need food or maybe they need these other pieces. And what I'm clear about is there's some parts of the academy where we're already doing caring work and not calling it that. And we want to, I think we could be more clear about it. And I think I jumped to another question, so I'm going to come back to you.
That's okay.
Okay.
We can come back. And I'm with you, so we're good. So I think what you're hitting, I think you're hitting on a lot of things, and we. So again, for folks all over the room and at home, we've had multiple conversations over time, and so we're bringing you into our seasoned conversation, if you will.
Oh, yes.
So Jill and I talk a lot
Yeah.
about how institutions are not designed to set up care, right?
Ain't.
So when I think about, so a common example we're seeing, and I'm good. I have job security. So we're seeing some things around like the return to being in person. Like again,
Yeah.
I was a residential campus at Davidson where we got to work from home if we're in student affairs, and now not because of my boss is saying come back to work, HR has made a policy about certain restrictions of what it would take to be able to work from home. Right? And a lot of campuses are in that space. And so, what I want to talk to you about a little bit and kind of tease out is there's a tension between institutional policy and humanity and care.
All day.
So you have a supervisor who may be all about centering his staff, his and individual colleagues, right? And wanting to do care work in ways that the policy may not allow, and there's these tension points around that then become these equity questions, right? And all of a sudden it's not fair, right?
That's right.
So let's talk about institutions and care and all that and how that's
So foundational to this conversation is the both and, right? Because at the end of the conversation, there's no clear answer. It's this continuum of like both and, right? So policy gone policy. And actually, let me not speak for any institution. Policy our actions are constrained by policy. So policy says at my campus, right, within my institution, you can work up to 2 days from home. Cool, bet. And you're right, there's no, working from home is not a substitute for child care, elder care. There's a lot of different pieces around that. And so then if someone is sick, but it's supposed to be at work, right, and your days are defined. So I'm a Monday, Friday. Okay, so today I will be at my house. Shout out to my house and my instance. Because that's my favorite part of working from home is getting to burn my candles because I can't do it at work.
Right. Yes, policy.
So policy says I can only do that. If I'm sick on a Wednesday, right, and I'm not sick enough, like I am feeling not myself, so I need to care for myself, but I'm clear I don't need to be in the office, right? You then have some tensions because my days at home are Monday and Friday, not Wednesday. And so you have constraints around it. Is it helpful for folks to understand it? Yes. And are there limitations to it? Yes. And so we think about bereavement leave, right? I'm in New Jersey again, we have bereavement leave. If my parents would have, gone to glory, I got 5 days. When I lived at home in Georgia, it was just going to be vacation time, right? It's just what it is. And there's no room for, beyond that bereavement, for the institution to show up for me, right? It just does not exist. And so the tension of how do people do community versus how does policy through institution do it, can you shift policy? Yeah, right? The imagination for that gets really constrained by our laws. And it's not that I am sure, because I work with some of these people who understand the limitations of policy. And they also understand that if you are generous outside of policy, you wind up with lawsuits because it becomes an equity issue.
Exactly. No.
And equity in the way we think of like, oh, it's fair for this person and that fairness does its thing. And that may be true that I'm trying to be generous. But then when Raheem the Dream, that's my imaginary person that I always call on. He's also an old school Atlanta rapper. When Raheem the Dream now wants time away for something that's important to that person, and we're unable to extend that same generosity this way, this difference in practice becomes a liability issue. And so care from an institutional perspective, this is Joan talking, this is not Dr. Collier at that institution talking, it then becomes problematic, right? And so when Dr. Wilson says that institutions don't move you forward or backwards around this sort of care piece. Truly is that our institutions are constrained by these things. And I would love to spend all day arguing with institutions, but I can't. So I absolutely do say, if we know this person is going to be out for this amount of time, how do we think about work? Right? How do we think about when the person returns back and we're checking in a way that worked for them? Are we making space for them to do what they need to do to grieve? Or maternity leave or parental leave that we just don't even have. In Jersey, we have it was like 60% of your pay. But our policy says you have to use all of your sick and vacation time to get to that. And then it's 60% of your salary.
Right.
My God.
Right.
But we espouse a sense of care as a country around family, right? I'm also a birth doula. I'm very clear on what happens to bodies after birth, right? And so you need time if you're birthing a whole person. Like, you made them from scratch. Like, first of all, go you. Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Like, the best science experiment ever. Like, voila, magic. And then they have to enter into this world, and now you're trying to recover and care, and work is still working, right? Capitalism is still capitalisming, and patriarchy is still patriarching. And so caring for that person beyond policy, right, where the work of the institution stops in its ability or capacity to care, there's community. And so we make sure folks have food. We ask how you're doing. If you're, doing human feeding, then like human milk feeding, we create spaces for that. We think about travel. Do you need to go to that conference that takes you away from your 8-month-old kid? While you're still recovering and you're still nursing, we are thoughtful about, are there other things that, we can do? Do we even acknowledge that your life has shifted and pace might be different for you? Those sorts of pieces always have me grappling. I think about care in terms of like grievances. Y'all know how I feel about restorative justice and care. How do we even think about repairing harm when it's been done, right? There are some institutions that won't even move toward restorative justice because they're afraid it opens them up to liability. And I'm like, okay, I'm not saying I don't care. Shout out to my Office of General Counsel. I'm not saying it's them. I'm just saying there are some folks who are terrified because restorative justice requires that folks are accountable for the impact of their harm, right? And so if we're saying that I did something that caused harm and someone might sue me, it's a problem. Sure, but we're not saying it has to get there, right? Harm has a big scale. And it may be that I feel personally disrespected. And if I feel respected in an ongoing way, it's hard for me to show up or think this as a real communal space. And so, yeah, there's just a lot of different pieces. I don't know if I got to all that, but we can. Okay, I did. All right. Yeah. That's just, it's just fascinating. One part of our conversation was me saying, like, I know what the critiques are before we even get here. Like, before we can even open up our mouths, the critique of what institutions can't do, right? Where our limitations are around these different pieces and how this is all theoretical. And it is theoretical in some aspects, but people are doing the work of care and community and joy building and cultivating it. And in many communities, though, it's subversive to the institution. And so folks might not know about the work because it's not useful for that work to be known. Or that work might invite institution to ask me to do that work in a formal capacity that is not in alignment with how I want to do my work. So part of my doctoral experience was back at UGA, shout out to the CASI program where I got my doctorate, woo woo, hey y'all. And we did a lot of sister circle work. I don't know how they got all them Black people in my PhD program. I really don't know. But it was so many of us. And so we had a very informal community of care and wellness and all these other sorts of pieces. And having to grapple with how the institution, would want to, do these more formalized spaces, that's really hard. I actually have a hard time being institution and not trusting institution. Because institution's going institution. And so, making peace with what they won't be able to do in their best effort. And still saying, I will leverage that to still get what I need and still do the rest of my care and community work over here. Because I'm clear in that, and it doesn't mean you don't keep pressure on institutions to live out what they say they want to be. You want to be a place where we are a community, define community and show up for it, right? Invest in it, do all those things. And I'm no fool, I can read history books. And so I'm clear on how people have navigated those systems and those structures. And so I think about institutions wanting to do better community work. And, you know, maybe sometimes principal struggles, sometimes PR struggles, whatever. Thinking about how we show up and still not lose our humanity in the midst of sometimes really inhumane conditions that look cute. Because sometimes that's where we are, you know. We think we are these polite, you know, non-hierarchical spaces, and we're steeped in hierarchy. We are steeped in power. We are steeped in nasty things with cute citations, and lots of degrees, and actually lots of people without degrees. And we just erase things and make up these narratives. And I'm like, those narratives don't serve, they don't actually help us be fully human. The complexities actually give us the richness that we want, that makes things more tangible, that we can grapple with and then make something out of. Girl, I'm off topic. Please get me back on topic.
You're good.
Okay.
I'm with you. Got 5 minutes. So with our last 5, I want to focus maybe a little bit personal, right?
Yeah, okay.
And part of that, I think, I want to interrogate, and I've been,
Go for it.
people that know me well know I'm all about self-care. I love it. Wellness, that's my jam, what have you. But I have a rub with it these days.
All
right?
day.
Especially because so much of our current, you know, wellness practices are all about this burden of us taking care of ourselves. And so I'm curious for you, how do you interrogate self-care? How do you define self-care for yourself and cultivate that for yourself? What is your toolkit for self-care?
I can be well, but if my people aren't well, neither am I. So that's my first push at this commodified, you know, I just have a problem with people trying to play in Audre Lorde's face. May she rest in peace. It's disrespectful. Read the text, right? Read the text first. Go back to the source.
Right.
But, you know, when she's talking about self, you know, it is not selfish, but it's an act of political warfare. If you're not at war, what is you doing? And so that for me, I am an avid sleeper. So let me start with self-care. I go to sleep. Now let me also caveat, I don't have children, and ain't nobody, man, tearing up my good peace. So I got a lot of ways to have peace and care. Okay, y'all not stressing me out. So that is my good sleep pattern. They never invited me back. I don't have that to keep me up at night. I do drink my water and I move my body. Now, I move my body in my office and I do take time when I need to take it. And I look at my schedule across the board. Now, I'm also in a position where I can make those decisions for myself.
Right.
So self-care for me looks like going to see my God babies. Hey, God babies, Gotti loves you. It is finding time to connect with my good friends. It's a quick FaceTime. I have a morning ritual, like a morning cry ritual, to just let myself be fully human. And I prioritize time with people who know me beyond self-care. Is that structures are structuring and it's like, oh, you are not well, what's wrong with you?
Right.
I'm actually halfway doing okay considering the circumstances, but you've detached circumstance from here.
Right.
It's still a pandemic regardless of what people say. We are still having outlandish levels of income and wealth disparity. We are still reckoning with race and gender and everything else. And we are being called to a capitalist norm of productivity as our primary metric for wellness. Money ain't never. We have to reorient ourselves. And we have to be clearer, because some people already been clear.
Right.
And they've been trying to tell us. We back on?
Okay, cool. Sure. Hey,
Dre?
friends, we're back. So we gonna try.
Baby, I'm gonna send this to Dre because I ain't got it. I don't know how to recap
This is
it.
when I come in a facilitator and pair everything together. So, for one, we had technical. There's a hurricane happening, so
Literally.
grace. But we were talking about ways in which we both cultivate joy for ourselves. And so,
Yeah.
do you want to give a couple bullets of what you said?
Yes, I said that I go play with my god babies. I go to therapy. I take time off
joy,
work.
self-care.
And I think about what brings me joy. I go to the beach in the summer.
Yeah.
I frolic all summer.
Right. Yes.
I'm a
And
frolic
so,
queen.
and I meant to say self-care and joy, but so for me, I talked a lot about my ways in which I navigate self-care for myself is about what brings me joy versus what drains me. I talked a lot about. Y'all know me well. Know that I'm all about boundaries.
Bop.
I'm really good about the hard no without the explanation. Even when there's a pushback, I still don't give an explanation.
Period.
As a way to protect my time and my energy
And
overall.
ooh, we talked about the precarity of uninterrogated self-care and the way it's been separated from its origin as political warfare, particularly for oppressed and minoritized people.
Yes.
And how the current construction of it is all around individual responsibility for care without the appreciation for broader concepts
Right.
that are causing harm, and then being like, oh, but you raggedy, it's on you. So sorry. And I'm like, actually, your systems are raggedy, and I'm out here low-key making it, but you can't read it because it's not legible to you because your system is raggedy. So that's kind of what we talked about. We were trying to transition to community care, but baby, then y'all went away.
Yes.
So now we're back.
Yeah. So at this point, we're going to go back to our workbook, and so there's some questions there for around community and care for you all to kind of explore.
Yep.
So if y'all want to take 6 minutes to, what's that? 6 minutes to do that, and then we're all going to come back
Yeah.
as a full panel to kind of have some closing comments, but also I know there's some questions both in the room and on Zoom as well.
Love y'all,
Thank y'all.
mean it.
righty. All right, welcome back. So we're going to just wrap up our symposium, but before we do, we wanted to open up for any questions that people either in the room or perhaps Zoom might have for us. Questions? Yeah.
So,
Oh,
my name is Des Woods.
Hold on, we have a mic.
Hold on, we
Sorry.
gotta get you a mic.
Maybe mic. Nope.
Testing.
There we go.
There we go.
Des Woods in the higher ed program here at NC State COPAC. My question to you is, I'm going through like a weird phase now where I thought it would be a bright idea to get a full-time job in the middle of a higher ed program. No. But my question to y'all is, since we've been talking about joy and then grieving over changes and things like that, when have you known like it's time to go from a position?
That's a great question.
That's a really good question.
Maybe I want to start. I can start too.
Go for it.
Ooh, I think well, one thing I would say is I think it's helpful to think about both in how do I phrase it? If what things are coming up for you in your job now are happening 6 months from now, would that still be okay for you, right? So to me, I don't, how do I say this delicately? I don't inherently have a loyalty to institutions. It's real. It's more about how are they going to set me up to grow and thrive in what I want to do and the work that I want to do in higher education. And if I feel like the space that could be because my supervisor, it could be the work that I'm doing on the day-to-day, it could be the staff that I have. If I feel like those dynamics are not feeding me in a way that's going to help me grow or thrive, then it might be my time. I would always say before you make that big move or pivot, to at least entertain a conversation with a colleague, supervisor first, not as a way to keep you there, but just see is there a way in my current job that the conditions could be different that might sustain me. But if you feel like you've done that work already, it could be your time to go. I don't know if that's helpful as a good way to start.
No,
Yeah.
that's good and reflects something that that I talk to faculty about a lot. And one of the things, like, it's a reflective kind of question that you need to ask yourself. A lot of times we show up in these institutions like, oh, I'm just grateful to be here, which is not a very empowering stance to take. The question that, I ask myself regularly is, do I really want to be here? And then I actually write out the answer. But it's the next question that's the most powerful. So if the answer is yes, then cool. Then I can talk about, okay, well, why is it that you really want to be here?
Right.
And if the answer is no, then it gets real good. Because then the next question is, what would it take to turn the no into a yes?
Yes.
And then you have to write it out.
Yeah.
And what you're essentially doing is writing out a prescription for yourself.
Exactly.
And then the next question is, can I do it? The things that I said that would make the no turn into a yes, are these things that I can actually do?
That's good.
Right?
That's good.
Or, in one instance, I had a faculty member that I was coaching actually do it, and she determined she didn't like what she did. She liked parts of her job, but it opened up an opportunity for her to have a conversation with her department chair to say, hey, can I change my job into this?
Right.
And he said, yeah. Right? And it was a space for her to do it. And so, you have more power than you feel like you do. But a lot of times we stay in this, oh, I'm so grateful to be here space that we never tap into it.
That's right. That's
Right?
Yeah.
So
I think we also get caught in these, I don't know the full circumstances of with your situation, but one thing I've been talking a lot to younger professionals in particular is that the ways in which some jobs have been set up as canons, like canons of residence life or canons of DEI, sometimes it's good to get out of that framework because I think we often try to fit ourselves into these jobs or to these functional areas.
Yep.
And once you lift yourself out of those boxes, so for example, I left doing identity-based work, DEI work, after 18 years. And I realized I wasn't necessarily leaving DEI 100%. I'm just doing DEI very differently. I'm doing it in a systems way. I haven't left that. I haven't checked it at the door.
Right.
Everything I do in my current position now is inherently centered on equity work. I'm just not doing it student facing. I'm just not doing it in a center.
That's
And
right.
so I think that helped me to understand, like, I don't have to fit myself into the boxes of the jobs or even the boxes of the campus. It's a matter of how do I get my general skills and purpose in how do I get to flourish in that world beyond the boxes? Does that make sense? So yeah.
Mine is short, and I see you got another question.
Yeah.
When I can't get my piece, I got to go. Something has to
That
shift.
too.
But I have a high tolerance for shenanigans because I actually don't expect people to act right.
Right.
But
Right,
when
no.
I can't get peace,
Yeah.
and I am restless in a way that I've never known unrestlessness before, I have to go. And go might mean change jobs, go might mean find other hobbies, go might mean a lot of things, but some of it comes back to what is required for me to stay here and be well. And if I can't answer that, I gotta go.
Yeah.
Yeah, in some capacity, yeah.
Another question?
So we have a question from the chat. If you were the institution, how would you design a community of care?
I'm
My
not
face, sorry.
Cops question.
Oh, gosh, okay. How would I mean, my organizational design brand is saying which part, right? If you are, again, I'm struggling. I don't know that institutions can do it. I think that people within them can cultivate it. I think we can think about policies, but institution in totality, hot mess. So different areas can think about how they can curate care. So HR, where can you think about your policies? Okay, here are the parameters of our policies. Here's how we can support supervisors and people with. When HR is doing hiring practices and they're teaching people how to do care in interview processes, how are you talking with applicants? How are you following up with people who are and are not getting those jobs? Where are people finding out the information, right? When you invite folks to your campus, have you been thoughtful about them more as your employee, right? Have you thought about where they find community as a person and not just on your campus, right? That's one component. If you're thinking about student affairs, for me, in theory, student affairs is the institution's investment in student care and wellness. In my mind, that's what it is. That's what care should look like. A total plan of community care. Community, for me, also means the surrounding community. So you're an anchor institution, right? You are leveraging the resources of the institution, be it research, be it student time or whatever that is, student learning, to better the communities that surround the institution. And if you're a land grant, the entire state. And so internally, then how are you providing for the wellness of the people who make the institution run and who show up for your students? Institutions love to talk about how much they care about students. Your faculty and staff are in distress. And so how you show up for them is actually empower supervisors. No shade, all shade. Supervisors and people who manage people need to know how to support people. Employees, yes, people too. So think about people first. What does it mean to support people? And I'm not saying I don't have a plan. I'm still grappling in principled struggle around that. But we have to reimagine, and where we bump at our constraints, just acknowledge this is our constraint. It doesn't mean it's always there, but at least we know, and then we can cultivate something else later. So if you're looking for perfection or a definitive plan, I don't have one. I don't know that our institutions actually are able to fully do it. And we ought to still try.
I'll just add that I think someone need a bigger imagination, right? And so in terms of why do institutions believe they have to be the one to cultivate the communities of care when there are models that exist outside of it, right? And so what would it mean to sort of think in community outside of the institution about how these sort of, and I'm using institution broadly, but how communities as institutions formulate care, right? And then model our practice after that, right? Or model our practice after these folks. Not in an exploitive way, because that absolutely can happen, but what does it mean for us to think about a different sort of model, right? And so we need, the institution, I think, needs to imagine itself as not the sole purveyor of what a community can look like.
Exactly, absolutely. Is there another question?
First, let me say thank you all so much. A lot of us have stumbled through August, stumbled through September, and now have made it to October. And this is refreshing to refill our cups as we think about the rest of this academic year. My question is for As a junior faculty member, and I know folks in the room who want to be faculty, shout out to y'all. How do you all think about loving practice and humanizing praxis in your classrooms? Like, what does that tangibly look like day to day for the students that you're teaching in class?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm going to be just real and say I didn't start out, when I started out as an early career faculty member, I was caught up in the tactics of mass distraction, right? I was trying to be what I thought it meant to be a professor, which meant that I was looking at the people around me and trying to be like them. And that didn't work real fast. And so, because what it also meant is that I didn't show up in the classroom in my authentic self. And in a lot of ways, I don't know that I knew my authentic self. And so by the time the institution got through institutioning with me, so I just got to a place where it's like, this ain't working. The students aren't getting the best version of me. I'm not giving the best version of myself because I am too busy trying to do academic, and at some point, maybe right before tenure, maybe right around when I moved here, I decided I'm going to show up as my authentic self. And I think it's just now, like I spent the first half of my career doing it the way I thought, I was supposed to do it. Second half is you're just going to get me. And I don't know, y'all tell me if y'all benefit, but I feel like you benefit more from that instead of trying to do, now I'm at a place where I don't want to be anything like what I see in the academy. Like all of the dehumanizing ways in which people act and treat each other, like I don't want to have anything to do with that. And in a lot of ways, I'm trying to do the opposite of that. And so what it means for me is I show up in my full self. I'm honest about what's going on with me. I bring in what's happening in the real world into the classroom. I try to let I'm very vulnerable with students too. Like I let them know what's going on in my life because I'm human too. And if y'all feel like y'all don't have it together, I remember maybe it was last year, Jayla, I just stopped the class. It was just like, I'm not okay. Are y'all okay? And they looking at me like, no, we're not okay. And so we just scrapped the plan and we talked about, so if we're not all okay, this is not okay. And what are we going to do to try to be okay? And how do we hold ourselves accountable for making sure that we do something on a regular basis to make ourselves okay? So it's the authenticity piece for me. It's a lot of times, the academy has a way of breeding perfectionism and nobody's perfect, but we all run around trying to pretend to be perfect when there's no such thing. And so that's what I mean. I don't even want to pretend to be perfect. I want to be who I am and show up in that way. And what that also means is I have some real boundaries. Because what's not going to happen is like we can agree to disagree, but when the disagreement is rooted in you oppressing me, like there are going to be some boundaries. And I'm really clear about that too.
I think I actually learned, and I'm not tenure track at all, so I don't know if it's helpful, but I'm adjunct. And so, there's a freedom, I will say this, there's a freedom in being an adjult, because you don't have to care as much about some things. Because you're not locked in the ways I think tenure track people are, right? That's real. And so, but what I say that to say is that partly due to quarantine, but also just in general, I teach student development theory. It is impossible to teach all of the theories. And I had to just make choices alongside with my department chair of like, what is it these students really need to know? Like when they are done with my class, and that helped me to decide, okay, what are some things that I can put as just supplemental, just if you're curious, you want to dig deeper, and what are the things like they need to know it or my chair is going to say something. You know what I mean? Like that helped me free me up from the pressure of feeling like they had to know the full breadth of at least that subject area overall. And so I think I take a nod to Dr. T.J. Stewart, and he was with me recently, and I know, homie. He sets up his classes oftentimes with here are the intentions we're gonna have. Yes. We may not get there in the timeline in which I initially set, but we're gonna do the best to try to get there, and if we don't, that's just where we are. And I think that, I learned from him, like, oh, that's so freeing, to say, like, if we don't get to a certain place by week 5, that doesn't mean I failed or that I didn't meet the mark. It just means that I had to sit with students, or they had to sit with something longer, and that's still, they're still learning, they're still getting a larger benefit. So that helped me personally to let go of, because I'm a very timeline person, like, you gotta stay on time. That freaked me up. That freaked me up quite a bit. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Other questions?
One final question.
Who wants it?
So hello, Kelvin Rutledge from Southern Connecticut State University. First, just thank you for filling our cups today. I just really appreciate the intentional pause to say, let's talk and acknowledge our truth. One of the undercurrents, I think, for me of today is this idea of the power of scripts, whether the internal scripts to interrupt or disrupt, but also the internal script to correct or reimagine, right? So an invitation to imagine, where does scripts fit in this overarching idea of joy, care, and community?
Yeah, wow.
That is so rich.
Yeah.
Where do scripts fit in our understanding and moving through of love? Let me marinate with that.
Yeah, I think it's what you were talking about earlier in terms of not being critical about how we think about self-care. Like that was a perfect example. Like I do feel like we talk about it so much in this country, and it has become script-like. Oh, go get a pedicure and that's self-care. But no.
What?
Yeah, no.
Right.
And so, and misusing, Audre Lorde's, self-care is a.
I hope she haunts people.
Right. It's like don't do that. Don't do that to the queen. Don't do it.
She does.
And so, yeah, if you're not engaging in political warfare, then going to get a pedicure ain't self-care.
Ain't.
So, and so it's really about tapping into your authenticity and realizing what it means for me is different than what it means for you, right? And you got to figure out, from an authentic place, what fills your cup. And so a lot of times when people are searching, I say, go back to, when you were a child.
That's right.
Right? What did you like to do? What brought fulfillment and joy to you?
That's
So
right.
for me, I remember going to block parties, and I'm a hip hop girl, and so it's music. Music will always do it for me every single time.
Every time.
Yeah.
And so when I think about how I can insert joy into my day, if I do something and I may hit a milestone, I'll put on my favorite song and
Period.
just and just dance.
And you'll do what, joy?
I'm joy. That's joy for me. Yeah. Now I'm like, hey. So yeah. But a lot of times, we get busy, right? And we busy ourselves because we're probably following scripts that we shouldn't be following. But when you're busy, you don't pay attention. You're not intentional. You're not present in the way that you need to be in order to move the way you need to move and get off the script.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
I try to find scripts that work. So I try to channel back to what scripts did people who came before me and had to deal with shenanigans, what did they do? What was their script? And so, for me, one of my scripts became during the shutdown that was COVID was, you got to you have to be here, but you should be inside, you should be alone. Like that actually does not work for me. What works, what has always worked for people, connection. Who can I safely connect with? My godson. And so I was telling my team earlier, he was like a year and a half old. He didn't know anything about COVID. He knew Auntie's here and it's playtime. And that script worked for me. Or when I think about needing to grieve, the U.S., again, culturally doesn't have its own scripts for mourning, but West African cultures do. Indigenous cultures in this country do. I'm Black American. We have scripts for grieving and letting yourself mourn. And so I think about that, and I think about what the prescription is for then cultivating a sense of fulfillment or something that I need to move it around. And so I said, I'm churchy, and we always get ridiculous. What did Jesus do, while he was down here trying to save people? He ate and had a good time with his friends. So let me go eat and have a good time with my friends, right? What did Jesus do before he got to the cross? He rested. Well, let me take my butt to sleep. Yeah. So what script works, right?
Yeah.
That's like what I go like, what is the prescription, right? Like there are these things that we know, these dominant narratives. And then you're like, I'm doing that, but the formula's not working. When the math don't add up, you got to redo your math. Now, I'll get to the answer, but baby, show your work. The work ain't working.
Yeah.
So I do some different work, and I try something different, and then the math be mathing.
Yeah, yeah.
So I figure out what works, even if it's in contradiction to the formula, and if the formula is raggedy, it's raggedy. I got to call a thing a thing. These dominant narratives will get you in trouble. But who does the dominant narrative serve? Ain't me.
That's it.
And when it is me, then I'm like,
Nobody.
well,
Yeah,
what
yeah,
group do I belong to that it works for me? But for the most part, it doesn't work for me. So I got to find something new. And the new is really just the reaching back to St. Copa, the old, to bring forward. Because it's probably erased. Because it was too dope. And they was like, absolutely not. And I'm like, absolutely yes.
And Dr. O'Keller told you it's already in you. The drum is
It's
in
in
you.
there.
It's in you.
It's in, okay.
Yeah.
So I'll just add, I think that if we know anything about whiteness, the force of whiteness is that it wants to engineer you back to the script, right? And so one of the things I'm thinking about is Diller's work talks about it being seductive, right?
Yes.
Like, it's not that just these scripts exist,
Come on, Wilson.
but that in some ways we like how they make us feel,
Come
if we can
on.
be real about it, right? Or we like the prestige that might come from it, or we like some of the rewards of the academy. Y'all don't got to say it, I already know it, right? And so what does it mean for us to not only sort of acknowledge that that script exists, but then to begin to set a naming practice that allows you to cultivate something very different.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Wow.
Ooh, that was delicious.
That was delicious.
I ain't gonna lie, we up here preaching better than folks letting on.
Look, I'm gonna do a
That ain't hit me, okay? We finna run, but we can't.
But we gonna spin.
I'm finna take off.
I'm not doing
Y'all here to shut us down and give us a good
Yeah.
benediction.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
We are.
we do
Okay,
good.
I'm gonna be
Okay.
quiet.
We're gonna behave. Okay. Go.
We wish we had more time. Why we didn't schedule more time, I don't know. I want to start off by saying Joy, Wilson, Joan, Dre, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I know folks were talking about cups being full, but I think there's a lot spilling over right now from these past few hours.
We love abundance.
So, thank you. Thank you. I also want to take a moment to offer some other thanks to the faculty, staff, and especially students here at NC State for welcoming us and allowing us to be in your space, and just the warm welcome, the great food. I got my biscuits. They have heard about the North Carolina biscuits for a while, and I got my fill of biscuits, so very happy. Also want to thank our AV staff, the staff here at the Friday Institute, and just all the folks who came together to make this happen. Also, a special shout out to Dr. Trisha Fetcher-Gates, who has been instrumental in helping plan this. And I'm going to end, and then I'll toss it over to Chris, by inviting you all to ASHE, our annual conference upcoming in November. I know a lot of folks here are registered, but we hope that you can join us in Las Vegas in November. It's going to be, I think, a great continuation of some of these conversations, especially under Dr. Gales' theme of humanizing higher education and her presidential speech that will get the conference kicked off. So we just hope that you all can join us in community in November as well.
Yes.
I also want to invite you, after you go to ASHE in Las Vegas, to join us in New Orleans in March for the ACPA 2023 convention in our 99th anniversary year. We're going to party like we're 99. And really, again, hope to continue these great conversations there, because higher education needs us, and it needs these conversations to continue happening. As timing is appropriate, tomorrow is the start of Careers and Student Affairs Month. So, to make sure that you all have access to continuing the conversation, ACPA wants to offer discounts throughout the month for folks in our profession. So, starting this month, graduate students can get a 20% discount off of membership for the whole month using discount code SAGRAD22. I'll say it again, SAGRAD22 for a 20% discount. We also, during the month of October, Careers and Student Affairs Month, are giving a 10% discount to register for ACPA 23 to anyone and everyone who wants to join us. using discount code CSAM. Careers, C, and Student S, Affairs, A, month, CSAM. So the best time for the lowest possible cost to join us and to be a part of a community of folks that center care and joy and community. So thank you again, everyone, for being here. Thank you to our fantastic presidents, to our fantastic panelists. We wish everyone here and joining us virtually a very safe weekend ahead. Thank you again.
All right. Y'all were awesome. Now the weather's still weathering, so y'all be careful. And puddles, they're deeper than what they seem. So drive slow if you're driving.
Take your time.
Yeah.
Rashonda,